My name is Patrick Richardson. I'll be the moderator this evening. I am the managing editor of Cherokee County News Advocate. We are sponsoring this in conjunction with the Columbus Chamber of Commerce. The first debate tonight, of course, is a head-to-head between Mr. Hauser and Mr. Randall. The way this is going to work is they will each get a 2-minute opening statement, and then they will have some questions for each other. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer the question put to them. His opponent will get a 1-minute rebuttal, and there will be a second 1-minute rebuttal at my discretion. I also have some questions that have been submitted, time available. We will go ahead and ask those. We had a series of questions submitted, but most of them were to the state candidates, and so rather than take up a lot of time in the much larger debate coming after this, we thought we'd go ahead and try and get those out of the way tonight. At about 10 till, Jake LaTurner, who's running for state senate, is going to have 10 minutes. He's going to take have an opening statement and take some questions from the audience as well. And then we will move on at 7 to the debate with all of the candidates that are running for various local offices. I thank you all for coming out, and we'll go ahead and get started. Mr. Randall has, according to the coin toss, will make his opening statement first. Mr. Hauser will then make his opening statement, and Mr. Hauser gets the first question to ask the first question tonight. So thank you for coming out, and go forward.
My standard, and I promise I'll sit down after this. Promise I'll sit down after this. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks, Pat and the Advocate, for stepping up right in the middle of our heat thing and back through there and saying they'd do it. It's pretty nice of you guys. I'm glad we're getting to do this. Mike and I both agreed that this is a pretty important position. There's a lot of important issues in Kansas right now. 30-second sound bites aren't enough to get the point across, and so we both wanted to come talk it out. Wanted to say, for those of you that don't know me, what I stand for and what I'm running on. Number one, education. There's a lot happening to our schools right now, a lot of negative going on. Budget cuts, just wiping out public education, and I think our schools are the centerpieces of our communities. That's the number one thing I'm fighting for. Number two, property taxes. I'd like to be one of those candidates where I can just say, I'm going to cut all the taxes, and I'm going to fix everything, and I'm going to make it rain, and I'll give everybody a sack of money and pat you on the head and promise everything you want. But instead of doing that, I want to narrow it down to the things we can't focus on. One of those is property taxes. We'll probably talk about that more in the debate. We'll get into detail. And the other one is a comprehensive vision for job development in Kansas. Kansas is in bad shape job-wise. The whole country is. And when the country's in bad shape, Kansas is always at the bottom usually. And I don't want to be there anymore. I'm sick of it, and I think there's creative solutions that we can apply. It's a large vision, but we're going to share that today as well. I think we can move forward with that if elected. And lastly, I wanted to say, if nothing else, Mike and I can draw a crowd. And there's been a lot of talk about the debate, and I'm sure all of you are undecided voters, don't you think? But if you came to see a fist fight and a knockdown drag out, I'll share something. Mike and I met in the hall just a minute ago, and just about at exactly the same time, we both looked at each other and said, November 8th, let's get a drink or something. So, we will attack each other. We're going to attack each other, politically. I think that's an important difference. And I think you can get nasty and go after each other politically, because if you have to believe all the same stuff, why are you running against each other? So that's going to happen, but if you came to see a big show, I don't think it's going to get to that point. Who knows? Even if it does, we're going to have a lot of fun. I just want to thank you all for coming out, and if you're going to the game afterwards, good luck to all your kids. I think Mike and I are heading over to Riverton. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming. Thanks, the Advocate.
Well, I don't know how many of you don't. Is this thing can hear me? All right, thanks. My name is Mike Hauser. I'm here from Columbus, Kansas. I've lived here most of my whole life, about 48 years, about 53. Grew up here. I love this town. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I love the small town values we have and the people that live here. Why I'm running is I believe that we deserve better than what we've been getting from Topeka in the past. Like Grant says, job creation is number one on the list. Everybody knows that. I had a poll out on the site, and it seemed like that was the number one question, was the education funding and jobs in the areas. And so tonight you're going to hear two different ideas probably on how to attract jobs to to the area and fund their education. And so it's your job to decide which ideas you support and vote for that candidate, you know. Some of my endorsements have been, I've been endorsed by Kansas for Life, Kansas Chamber of Commerce, National Federation of Independent Business, National Rifle Association, Kansas State Rifle Association, Americans for Prosperity, and Political Chips. You know, and all those people see something in me that they like, and that's why they chose to support me in these endeavors. But last time I ran, I didn't hardly get any endorsements at all, and I think it's a big honor to get some of those. And like I say, I'm going to leave it up to you guys tonight. We're just going to talk about the issues and try to spell out where I stand, what I support and what I don't support, and Grant's going to be the same. Thank you all for coming, and hope you learned something tonight.
All right, Mr. Hauser, you get to ask the first question.
Well, Grant, we just talked about it, and I've been on your webpage and read and listened to you speak. And you speak a lot about putting Kansas back to work, but I have yet to see anything on how you plan on tackling this issue. I'm curious, I'm sure they are too, as what your plan, your job creation plan actually going to consist of, you know. With the growing debt, without growing our state and local and federal debt, where would you have a residents work? Under the public sector or under the private sector? And then I'd ask you to elaborate on how you plan to accomplish the growth necessary to create these jobs.
The answer to that is going to be a well-rounded, long-term vision for growth. Right now what I see is a movement towards, Sam Brownback has openly stated, getting rid of the income tax. You know, it's been just a kind of a slash and burn tax plan, and just hoping that we're going to somehow make up all this revenue that we're losing. You know, which most statistics show we'd have to have 550,000 new jobs at 50,000 a year in the next 5 years just to meet that revenue that we're losing. To me, that's not worth the loss. That's not worth the risk. To me, what I look at is an educated workforce. I look at infrastructure for new business. I look at, yeah, good, solid, fair tax for business, not to scare off business. I look at niche growth for small business. You know, we need to build, instead of having this plan coming down from Topeka, we need city plans here that says, you know, Galena, we both know what they're doing. Great stuff there with the hospital. Baxter, grow towards I-44. You know, tap into Cowtown, tap into Route 66. Every one of our towns has something special, you know, and this is something we both talked about. Small business is where it's at. But those are the things that attract people to live here. Those are the things that grow business. One of the problems I have with the Brownback plan is that when you lose that income tax, you cannot compete competitively in the economic sector. The 9 states that don't have an income tax currently rank last. This was actually, Bloomberg published a study in the middle of this summer in economic development over the last 5 years. Companies are looking for more than the slash and burn tax policy. And I think education is a huge part of that. The Industrial Revolution as we know it is over. I have a lot of friends in tech industry, and there's negative employment in tech industry. There are jobs waiting to be had in the tech industry. We're not training our kids towards that. If I was your representative, I would be at the doorsteps of colleges like Labette, like NEO, moving satellite campuses into all these empty buildings in our downtown squares for a couple of days a month, talking to people who are 40 and 50 who have lost their jobs, they could train on associate's degrees for those, talking to high school seniors to move into those fields. The jobs are there. The jobs are waiting to be taken, but we have to train the people and get ready to take them from these companies. The possibility is there, it's screaming for us, but we have to get on the first part of that wave. I don't want Kansas to be on the back of the wave watching the rest of the country do it, like we've watched Germany do it, like we've watched Japan do it. It's time to move forward.
See, here's one part where we disagree on. I happen to personally believe that if we would turn loose some of the tax revenues and let the businesses reimburse and have some taxpayers keep some of this money, it would be just the opposite effect. He quotes a survey where 9 states have the highest tax rates. I saw a survey, another survey, it was Rich States, Poor States, that said the 9 states with the lowest tax burden on their population were the ones that were growing in population and business. And you think that's like Wyoming, Texas, Florida, and your highest taxes states like California, New York, up in the Pennsylvania area, they have the highest taxes. And they're losing businesses, and they're losing people. So what I want to do is create, with lowering the income tax rates, we're going to create a business where it's going to be more attractive for businesses to come to the area. Nobody's going to want to come to Kansas if they can't make a profit. And that's why they're leaving states like California. They're facing some serious problems out there because their tax bases are too high.
Mr. Randall, you have the next question?
There was time for a second about it, wasn't there? Just a shorter one?
I'll let you have 30 seconds.
Okay. When you talk about those economic indicators, we've seen that those states, those 9 with the lowest, actually grew in the last 5 years. You're right, and they grew at 8.7%. The states with the highest grew at 8.7%. The states with the lowest grew at 10.1%. I mean, and that's from the Congressional Budget Committee. The numbers are just there. And we're going to make up that lost revenue. It's a teeter-totter situation on taxes. When we wait to one and get rid of one, we're making up that lost revenue with the sales tax, like Brownback just mentioned, is threatening to keep, and with property tax. Nobody wants to live here. It's going to be hard to work if you can't live here. We're going to hope businesses come to make up that revenue. You know they're going to be driving back to Missouri to live. We have to look at it from a common sense standpoint. I'd like to just wave one and get rid of all the taxes, but it's going to teeter-totter. And that's hard to hear, but it's the truth. And your property taxes will go up when you cut those income taxes. They already have been.
Next question.
Okay.
No,
If you would like to get under 30 seconds, I gave him 30.
yeah, I still like to say that I disagree with you, Grant. But that's one of our major differences between the two of us is how we look to go about solving the problem. If you just look over what's happening in Galena, the doctors that came over here, they came here for an advantage, and if we could give businesses just one more little advantage, we can't do it, just do a slice and dice. Everybody knows that. That's irresponsible, and I think that we could be done in increments of balance, one way or another, and it's going to take a while. I mean, we all know that it's not going to be a quick fix.
Your question.
Well, that's the hottest issue we have, so of course my first question was pretty much the same thing. And so let me tweak it a little bit just on the fly. And I was going to say, you're going to shake my hand after this because there's not going to be any gotcha, type question. I wanted the first question to be just like yours. We've been hearing a lot of these 30-second sound bites, so what are the specifics? And I want to talk about, you mentioned broaden the base a lot. Broaden the base, broaden the base, broaden the base. So I'm just going to throw you one at you and let you run with it. What are the specific plans for broadening the base, the tax base?
Well, the specific plans of my ideas, it's just what I just said a while ago. I mean, we have to make Kansas a more business-friendly climate. And we're going to do so by, A, letting those businesses make just a little bit more profit than they normally are. B, we're going to try to reduce some of the regulations on the businesses, heck, even on the farmers around here. We've got so many EPA regulations going on that some of them are just way out of, wacko. Should be able to do away with some of those things, or at least give them redo. But like I say, that's making Kansas more friendly to the businesses that come over and the people, as a matter of fact. Like I said before, the people are going to want to come in because they're going to be able to keep more of their hard-earned money. When you tax income, you're stealing that wealth. You're taking wealth out of the system and just redistributing it. I mean, the government jobs don't create any. They're created by the businesses and the people that work there. As
lot of talk about what exactly small business is. You know, and I don't see a company with 500 to 1,000 employees as small business. You know, and I look around at what we need and I see small business. I think of people I know on main streets that have 1 to 10 employees and the kind of things that they're dealing with. And to be honest, most of them that I know are operating at a loss most of the time. And so a tax break isn't going to help them. You know, what they need are other businesses in town. What they need is having their property taxes lowered. What they need is to maybe be considered in a different tax bracket or be considered in a different utility bracket even, you know, instead of commercial as a 500-person business. You know, the coffee shop downtown with a part-time employee and one owner shouldn't be getting taxed the same as Walmart. And so I think one solution I would have would be to break those up into more graded and prorated, what's a small business, what's a medium size, and then apply those tax rates and apply those regulations in those ways.
You know, small business, they grow if you give them incentive to grow and if you allow them to keep some of their profit and reinvest back in. I can think of 4 examples right here. Bill Amick's out here at Calibrated. He started out here on the highway with presses, 2 presses, and grew that business to I don't know how many people work out there now, but this has hundreds of people work there. Roe Parsons out here at Mid-American Pipe, same thing. He started small, had a dream, and he grew that out. He does millions of dollars worth of work a year. Crossland Construction. Started out of the back of a house. Grew it in 75, 30 some odd years. Grew it from nothing to a multi-million-dollar business.
And we had common sense taxes then that would allow them to grow and fund our schools and keep property tax low. So why are we trying to move so far away from that system? You know, is my question. I'd like to move back to that common sense system. Like you just said, those companies are great and they've grown like gangbusters. Let's stay there. Let's move back to common sense tax system. You know, if they were so great, why are we trying to move away from that? Why are we pushing toward the cliff?
I don't think we are pushing it toward the cliff. See, that's where we're different. That's the difference between the two of us, and basically between the parties. We feel that if you'll turn that loose and let the small businesses and the larger businesses reinvest some of their profits into their businesses, that they will grow. I mean, that's proven. You know, you can read study after study on that.
Just one quick rebuttal and we'll move on to the next question.
Well, I mean, again, there needs to be some basis of, to answer that question, there has to be some basis of reality, I guess, to move forward. Because, you know, we're talking about all these businesses that have done so well, you know, and grown so much. I'll go back and reiterate that point. And they did that again at a time when we had the, you know, back to Blue Ribbon School, you know, the teachers here in Columbus, you know, we had our schools they didn't just stand up, they were improving. You know, and so we had a fair tax base that didn't punish the middle class and raise their property taxes. Well, at the same time, we had these businesses growing through the 80s and 90s. And so you say Kansas Democrat, and I get all this other stuff thrown at me because of national Democrats. I'd probably be a Republican in California or Massachusetts. I'm a moderate, you know, Kansas Democrat. I want to move back to that moderate, fair tax base. You know, I don't know why we're trying to push it in this extremist. Well, I know why, and there's big money behind it, but I don't like pushing it towards this extremist cliff that we're going down when we've already seen it work.
Next question, sir.
Well, you know, this is one of the biggest issues we got, is tax. And face it, when we get up here to the state rep position, I mean, that is about all we deal with, basically. I mean, that's we control the purse strings of the state, you know, between us and the Senate. So, those are important questions, and I'm going to stay on kind of a few tax-based questions because, you know, that's what we're all concerned about. And my next question to you would be, you know, you're talking about real tax reform, and in the name of lower property taxes, okay? And you and I know that when a state representative, the only power he has that he can actually vote on up there would be, at the state level, would be to touch the 20 mil level that they've already, you know, these are state established mill levies. So, you know, you've got 20 mills for that. You've got a mill for correctional facilities and half a mill for educational buildings. So, in short of going to a flat tax, which in Baxter, you ridiculed the man for bringing up like the fair tax, and you said it wouldn't stand a snowball chance of passing. So short of saying that we're going to have tax reform based on a new tax system, would you either A, would you vote to lower the established tax of the 20 mills, or would you raise state income taxes to give relief from property taxes, hoping that they would drop the mill levy at the county level, or would you take control of the school's local option budget?
Well, that's, actually, I really like that question, because when you give the options like that, it shows that there's a teeter-totter. You know, that you just can't wipe it all out. And well, first I want to say that I didn't ridicule, you know, that guy in Baxter. I didn't say it because I didn't like the fair tax. I said it wouldn't stand a snowball's chance because of, right, I know you like the fair tax, and you know, you wish it was happening, but you know reasons that it won't. You know, on the larger level, I actually thought it was a good question. I asked the kid today and Kyle afterwards, and I said, that was a pretty intelligent question. But you're talking about property tax, you know, and what we can do to shift the budget at the state level, because you're right, we don't vote on property tax. And that's one of the problems that I've had with Brownback's plan, is that he creates this budget that kills government revenue, and so then our schools and our municipalities and our county commissioners, you know, are forced to push raising these taxes at the very local level, and then we complain about it, and then, you know, all of us in Topeka can go, oh, I didn't raise your property taxes. I cut your income taxes. Don't blame me. You raised your own property taxes. But I think you gotta be pretty slow to not see that those completely affect each other. You know, and so to answer your question specifically on your choices, I would return, because you're gonna raise it on property or you're gonna raise it on income, I would return to that income rate, that common sense, moderate income rate that we had. Not on business. I would probably agree actually when it comes to business tax, but on the income, I don't want to lower income on the wealthiest Kansans and then put that back on the middle class, burden the working class with their property taxes, because we've seen it do this, and I'd like to see it do this. And so that's my answer for that, for property tax.
1 minute, sir.
Well, the last tax plan that they passed in the last session, it cut taxes across the board, and it eliminated one of the tax brackets, if I remember correctly, and then combined them down too. And then it also doubled the poverty, a few things in the poverty level. So to me, your blanket statement of saying, you know, he just cut taxes for the wealthy doesn't wash with me, you know. He cut taxes for everybody. We'll see in January, I guess, what happens, because it starts taking effect in January. You know, I didn't have anything to do with that budget, but I think that they're on the right track by what they're doing.
Well, the reason we see a different, you know, gradation of wealth, you know, of who's paying the more taxes, is that it's a percentage. You know, like we just said, in 2010, when the Senate voted on raising the sales tax, a lot of the extremist far-right Republicans said, you know, they just pounded the people who did that. And then they went back and voted them out now in the primary because they raised that sales tax. But of course, as soon as they pounded them politically, now they've turned around and said, you know what, we might be keeping that sales tax up there, because we're going to have to keep that revenue up. Now, if I pay sales tax and I made $100 this week, somebody else pays sales tax and made $100,000 that week, I'm spending every single dollar that goes through my hand. I got to live. You know, other people, that percentage, sales tax hits the middle class hardest. Property tax hits the middle class hardest. You know, and that's one thing that I'm hoping everybody sees, because Brownback's come right out and said it himself after this plan. Oh, this is going to be great, it's going to bring jobs, we're going to lower these taxes. They attacked people in the primary because they voted to raise that sales tax. Just as soon as they got them out of there, he's turned around and said, oh, you know what, the sales tax looks pretty good. You know, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to lower it just yet. Just wait a couple years when we get all these, you know, then we'll be able to lower it. Then, you know, maybe I promised you we'd lower it right away, but just wait till we get all these jobs. And that's just going to continue to roll, you know, because like we said, it's going to be made up somewhere. That revenue is going to be lost, and you've got to, we're not going to shut our schools down. You know, we're going to keep fixing our roads, so you're going to have to make it up somewhere.
Mike?
Well, I still have to beg to differ, you know. I'm not gonna sit here and defend Brownback's budget because I have nothing to do with it, you know. But I think that the idea is sound. I really do. And that's one of the things I'm telling you guys. It's up to you to decide what we're gonna do, because you're gonna say which one of us you wanna send up there, by what philosophies we practice, you know, so you're gonna be the one doing that.
Maybe you have the next question.
Probably one you'll have fun with here. You know, and a lot of the stuff that's been going out, you know, the mailers and stuff, that's, you know, I saw actually the president was at Columbus Fair. I didn't know he was there, but apparently we were there together, you know, in the picture. And I actually have a presidential question, you know, it's not popular here in Southeast Kansas, and there's been this kind of movement, you know, in media to try to connect me to that, like, you know, we're good friends, you know, and I don't have a voting record, you know, I've never said anything publicly, you're not going to see me putting up, you know, that's a personal thing for me. And I just want to know what is it exactly that's connecting me to that, and to stay on that topic, I know, hope this isn't 2 questions, take your time, she'll let you. But, you know, some of the other stuff that went out, you talked about Obamacare, you know, and that scares people, that hits hard when you talk about that, and it should. It should. You're right to say that. My question is, what are you going to do about that? You know, you're using that to tell people, you know, this is kind of one of my issues. This is how I feel. We're going to work as hard as we can against it. What exactly is your plan there?
Well, what was the first part about it?
Well, I mean, I wanted to know why I was connected, you know, to the president so much.
I
You know,
don't think I've made any connections that way. I just stated, I don't think I ever said the grant was for Obamacare or anything like that. So. What I feel is that the polls show that the majority of Kansas are against Obamacare. The majority of Americans were against Obamacare, but they passed it anyway. And Nancy Pelosi stood up there and says, hey, the only way you're going to find out what's in the damn thing is to pass it. Well, that's wrong. And so can you not imagine why people don't want it? Now you say, what can I do about it at the state level? Well, let's say it doesn't get repealed at the national level. I'm not even scared to even try to go into nullification on something like that. I'm a big firm believer in the 10th Amendment and states' rights. And there has been movements to nullify that. I know we need health care. It's ridiculous, the costing of health care. But for the insurance companies to come down and work it like that, and for the government to run it, you know it's going to be a disaster. We deserve better than that. So I want to fight this with every power I can at the state level, because it's a disaster waiting to happen. It's going to drive doctors out of business. It's going to cost us more money. We're going to have less care. It's going to be just like Canada up there. People wait for months for services, you know, and some of them die waiting. It was a bad bill, and it doesn't. We need better than that. You know, I'm going to fight it too.
I think you know, no offense, but I think you missed the point. Actually, I'm not a huge fan either. You know, well, that's what I'm saying is that we need healthcare reform bad, and the thing I hate most about it is that I thought we could have done a lot better. But my problem was with all of this, you know, I mean, you can see people clap because you're right. You know, you're right. People are scared of it, as well they should be. But I don't like this idea of campaigning that we're going to do something about Obamacare at the state level. You know, I'm a fan of the 10th Amendment too, but the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution completely bars us from doing anything about it. I mean, every newspaper in the country wrote about us when our Senate had our little vote about what are we going to do. You know, we voted against Obamacare, and they said, hey, this is just completely to pat your own backs. You guys do realize that that vote isn't going to do anything, right? And so I just have a problem campaigning on something that you can do nothing about. You know, we can work on CAN-CARE in for pushing money back on the Medicare part, which I'm sure you agree on, you know, and we can talk about that later. But as a whole, the actual legislation we probably agree on, but I'm not going to tell people that I can do something about it when there's nothing you can do because of the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution.